Hello, welcome to episode 17 of Better Riding, brought to you by Bennetts and Honda Motorcycles UK. I am Michael Mann from BikeSocial, and this, if you didn't know already, is the series that offers tips and advice to make you a better rider. Yes, we all want to be better at everything we do, right? So whether you've ridden for 2 weeks or 52 years, it doesn't matter, because we can all get something from this series and be a better rider. Joining me now to offer all the trusted detail is professional motorbike coach Mark McVeigh. So how's this for a bit of credibility? What a CV this is coming up. He's an experienced rider coach, of course. He's an ex-MotoGP engineer. He's a riding academy owner for over 20 years and the inventor of the MotoDNA rider training tech. Mark has taught over 10,000 riders to be smarter, safer, and more confident. G'day, Mark. How are you doing today, sir?
Yeah, g'day, Michael. I see you've got the welcomes Australian style. I'm very well, thank you. How's things?
That's only natural. Yes, I'm fine. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I'm all right. Okay, so in time-honored fashion, so what are we talking about today, Mr. McVeigh?
Yes, we're talking about the motorcycle hero's journey, and it's really kind of, looking at our riders. Are we riders responsible for our actions? And we're continuing the mindset theme of, the series. We spoke about intuition and driving behaviors and cognitive bias in previous episodes. So we're going to kind of continue that theme. And, as you mentioned, we've been trying it a long time. And it's obvious to me that, if we have some understanding and overcome our psychological glitches, we can be better, safer, and have a more enjoyable riding experience. So this episode continues that cerebral tour, if you like, and we're going to use a hero's journey narrative.
The hero's journey narrative. Interesting. Okay, well, before we learn a bit more about the hero's journey, just for everybody else who is watching this, in the comment section below, we've got a link to every other episode in Better Riding. Mark, okay, go on then. What is the hero's journey? I'm intrigued.
Yeah, well, it's a story framework. It was first used by a guy called Joseph Campbell, but it's been used in heaps of things that you wouldn't even realize, like Star Wars. So it's a very powerful narrative, but it's also useful for like human psychology. And because it kind of resonates deeply with people, and it mirrors the sort of growth, the process of growth and change that we all experience in life.
What's everyone going to get from this episode? What's the sort of the goal?
Yeah, so it's really for the riders to try and see themselves in our hero, right? And to get them thinking, to become more mindful in the way they ride. So if we start off, in the hero's journey, the first step is called the ordinary world. So we've got the 12 steps here, on the road, and the ordinary world. And in that ordinary world, we've got Joe. And Joe, he's just riding along, living an everyday life. He's commuting, and he also rides for fun too. And, he's aware of trucks and cars and traffic lights, etc. But he's kind of just cruising along, living his ordinary life.
So Joe looks like a bit of a newbie to riding. He's just passed his test. I think we've all been there, haven't we? Because we've done what we need to do to get through the test, and then we've been allowed out on our own, yeah? And then we're kind of thinking, all right, well, I remembered that bit, but you've not really got that experience, and I presume this is where Joe's at in his journey.
Yeah. It's funny you say when we're sort of released on our own. I do remember that day myself. I'm a 250 LC. What a great feeling that was. Be good to be able to bottle it up, actually. But yeah, that's exactly right. So that's Joe. And we've kind of all been there, right? So the next step on the hero's journey is the call to adventure. Okay, step 2. And really for Joe, for him, he is really seeing, these kind of crash stats. And gets him thinking, he's had no really quality training. He sort of doesn't even believe crash avoidance is possible. He thinks sliding out is safer than controlled braking. And it kind of hits him, he senses there's a gap between what he thought riding involved and the reality, of skill and safety and responsibility, if you like.
Yeah, like you said, we've all been there, haven't we? I mean, when I was learning, because I passed my driving test here in the UK before a certain date, I was able to ride a bike. Well, I actually used a little Yamaha Neos 50, so a little scooter. And I was living in London at the time, just sort of learning how to ride. I mean, there's I was going to say, are there safer places to learn how to ride than central London? Probably not that many. But it gave me the reactions that I needed, or the awareness that I needed. So I know everyone's got a different journey in a different way, but certainly when I started to do bigger journeys, when I passed my proper big test, I ended up on a Phaser 600. And all of a sudden I was thinking, right, well, I can, I'm experienced enough with the city riding, but I've never been on a journey outside of the city, never been on a dual carriageway on a motorbike, never been on a motorway on a motorbike. So all of a sudden these things, as you say, you learn as you live, don't you? So with all the experience, you're taking stuff in. So even after all the years I have been riding, there's still stuff that I'm learning now. Obviously, this series helps a lot with that too.
Exactly. So that's it. It's just a typical phase of our journey, if you like. And then when we lead on to the next phase, phase 3, this is called refusal of the call. So, if we look at this, Joe, he's fanging, round, nearly got his knee down on the roads. And he thinks, I'm careful. He says, I pay attention. I ride smart. I'm skilled. But, we through our episodes on the research, we can see that attitudes and personality traits, especially in less experienced riders and riders that lack the training, they often tilt towards increased risk, and that's through misjudgment rather than the thrill seeking. So that's kind of phase 3, if you like.
So you almost blanked out, aren't you? You've got that what's that effect? A blinkered effect, haven't you? Where you think your skill level is higher than perhaps what it is, and that's we learned it with the Dunning-Kruger, didn't we? In the previous episode,
exactly
about that limited amount of experience, but a high confidence.
Exactly, unconscious incompetence, and that's definitely a part of it. That's a human trait, And then, luckily enough for Joe, he gets into phase 4, so he meets the mentor in phase 4, and it's an older, wiser person, and that's been through it, life and experience, and right. Hey, mate, riding's not just thrill. Let's talk about ethics and responsibility and awareness. So this kind of, echoes studies, about safe riding criteria and, responsibility. It's not just individual, but it's kind of relational on the road. So that's the benefit then from meeting that mentor.
So mentors can be anywhere, can't they? Because you can, again, as we've mentioned many, many times, no matter how often you've ridden, there's always someone who can offer a bit of advice, and it's whether you heed that advice or learn from it.
It's just psychology, right? And when I look at this, I can see myself going through these phases. I'm going, oh geez, that was me, and I should have listened a bit more or whatever. But phase 5 now, so we're heading into nearly halfway through the hero's journey here, and this one is about it's called crossing the threshold. So it's kind of, he's met the mentor and he's kind of got a newfound humility. So he gets into his training, he's befriending, fellow riders, and he's kind of pushing more for the ethics, not just the ego. And the training, obviously, it offers insight, more awareness, and a skill you can cultivate. But ultimately, it's to give us those fewer close calls and crashes, but it's kind of makes him feel more accountable for his actions and the consequences. And of course, his family's happy about that too.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And that's a really important point, because you get so many barriers, don't you? When you think about taking a test or becoming a motorcyclist, there's a lot of things in the way. And sometimes that can be the people that are close around you. But what's interesting here is that Joe, by the way, I like his bike. He looks very, very smart on that. But he's starting to understand and become aware of becoming a better rider, isn't he? And I think that we've all perhaps been through that phase of and again, from personal, my story, you can even bring it down to every other ride. You're always going to learn something from that ride. Yeah. So long as you are aware of making sure that you are learning about it, like, again, you've spoken a lot of times on reflecting on each ride when you get home or when you get to your destination. Being aware that you can be a better rider is certainly one step to becoming that, enhancing your skill.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Mark, just before we move on to to stage 6, I just wanted to take the opportunity to answer a question that had been posed to me recently. I was asked if this better riding series would help reduce insurance premiums. Obviously, BikeSocial is part of Bennetts, an insurance broker here in the UK, and so I can say that there is an indirect benefit, because simply if you're a better rider, then you're less likely to have an accident, or indeed an accident that's your fault, and that's the critical thing. So
absolutely,
it's not a direct answer. Anyway, should we move on?
Someday we'll have that link to the insurance, the training with our motorbike coach app, but still working on that one. But yeah, phase 6. Mm-hmm. So this one's called Tests, Allies, and Enemies. Okay, and it's interesting who your enemies could be. It's that are testing you. So Joe's facing old habits. He's back, fanging around on the open roads and riding too close to cars and assuming cars always see him. And, research, segments bike riders by a kind of motivation, they've got different beliefs and risk profiles. And Joe kind of is learning to identify where, he sits in that spectrum. So, he's examining his decisions kind of more honestly. After the ride, he's going, oh, the way we excuse risky behavior, everybody does it, or just this once, or distancing or minimizing harm, so he realizes that when he thinks, oh yeah, just a bit faster, that's kind of like a cognitive trap on a slippery slope away from responsibility, potentially towards pain.
Yeah, it's interesting because you can get led down the garden path there a little bit, can't you? It's all very well being able to talk about motorcycle or tips or riding or how to do this or how to take that corner or counter steering, for example. Everyone's got an opinion, especially motorcyclists, and we all know how opinionated us riders can be. By the way, I like Joe's bike. He seems to have upgraded. He's got a CBR 650R now.
Yeah, he's on the special Honda program, so he's getting lots of lovely new Hondas. Yeah, no, I was actually talking to him out today. We were riding enduro, and he was telling me that he had a friend of his killed in New Zealand. And he's on a group ride, and one of the other riders caused the crash. And devastating. And I said to my mate, I said, I am more comfortable at turn 1 at Phillip Island with my knee on the ground than I am riding in a group on the road with people I don't know. So a group riding, it's an interesting thing, and it leads into stage 7, which is approaching the Inmost cave. So Joe is basically, starting to reflect now. He's in his group setting and he's with his friends, and he's thinking about, this kind of responsibility and, accountability. And, in the group, obviously, you can assume others will react if something goes wrong. And that can kind of lead to risk taken by default. We know that from the research. So he's feeling the tension. And, he's realizing this solidarity in the group, it can kind of dull your personal vigilance. And this is kind of where, enter herd mentality. That's where that comes in.
Very easy to get sucked in, isn't it? You just make it, you used the word assumption earlier, and it's ideal to describe the situation. You just assume that everybody else has had the sort of same level of training that you have, or are going to be able to react in the way that you can. But it's not often the case, or vice versa. You don't know that you perhaps are questioning your own abilities, especially if you're in a group with perhaps more experienced riders. Again, personal experience. I can talk about press launches only because you get a variation in ability and experience in a riding group, and sometimes you're placed or you're positioned. So they say, Michael, you're in position 3, and you stay behind that second rider for the duration of the morning, and you think, okay. Well, in that case, now I'm going to give myself a little bit of distance because I don't know this person. I've not ridden with them before. and equally the person behind me. They could be right up behind me, and I'm thinking, am I maybe a bit nervous?
Exactly, 100%. I totally feel your pain there, and I've been in that situation a few times. It's not fun, and yeah, this leads us into step 8, and this is the ordeal. Okay, so Joe himself, he's basically experienced, a tight corner of poor visibility, an oncoming car drifting wide, and he brakes hard and regains control in a near miss. And he reflects the rush afterwards. It's not just adrenaline. It's your laundry bill, and self-awareness awakened. He's saying, now I'm responsible. I chose this speed, and I nearly paid for assuming. But worse is to come, because you can see Joe's mate is not so lucky in this case.
We always think, don't we, as riders, perhaps it won't happen to me, and that's the worst way to be.
Yeah, and I think most riders know somebody that's had a crash. It's a common thing. So maybe it's a mate of a mate, or maybe it's your mate. So it'd be interesting. I'd love the riders and the viewers to tell us their stories in the comments about this. That'd be great. And this leads us into 9. Okay, so he's had quite a serious ordeal, right? So that was 8, and then into 9 is the reward. Okay. So this is kind of where he's reflecting. He's been doing some training, and he recognizes that the training it's attitude as well. And you just don't ride. You think, you anticipate, and the reward is not like just safe passage. It's conscious agency, and he realizes then being responsible isn't restrictive. It's empowering, right? Joe becomes a model, not just for himself, but for other riders too. So that's his kind of next phase.
I think we've all got a Yoda, haven't we? My Yoda would be certainly my dad initially, and then a couple of people who have been involved in my professional career, as part of BikeSocial, some, namely Mark Potter and Steve Rose, who I look up to as also hero motorcyclists, just because of their ability and experience. And we learn all the time, don't we? And as we become more experienced, we like to impart that wisdom. Obviously, you and I have this platform as well to try and help others. But of course, with experience and learning all those different tips and advice, it just feels good to pass them on, so long as you know that they are the right things to pass on.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm lucky enough to know Potsky and Steve, and I've have my regular chats with Steve that I really look forward to. Yeah, he's definitely kind of like a Yoda figure, so wise, and he's better looking than Yoda, obviously, but he's definitely got the wiseness. And this leads us into the next phase now, Michael, which is 10, which is the road back. So we've only got 12 steps out of all, so we're on 10, and this is kind of back to everyday roads. And Joe, he now notices car drivers, their lack of awareness of bikes, that kind of, competitive space that researchers talk about. Drivers don't anticipate bikes at junctions, and they don't, riders don't expect drivers to look. So he's adjusting, right? He's riding defensively, signaling early, making himself seen. And, he's humble but firm. And this is really the kind of enter the mindfulness phase, if you like, in 10.
He's obviously been watching Better Riding, hasn't he, Joe?
Exactly.
That and he's upgraded to a CB1100 now.
He has indeed. Cool. So now we're into 11, which is transformation. So this is super interesting. He's he's getting near the end, and he sees it one day. He sees another Joe, and this guy's had a bit of a close call, and he's pretty worried. So our Joe steps in. He's calm, and he's demonstrating about responsibility, and it's really just clarity. So he's sharing his experience, and even though it's a small moment, it's transformative. He embodies a responsibility, not through guilt, but as leadership, with leadership and empathy, if you like. And I meet plenty of Joes in this phase that have been riding for a while, and they're helping the sort of next generation of riders.
Sure, yeah, you've got your school, haven't you, Mark? So you must see it all the time. But it's
yeah, exactly right. And that's there's kind of like a bit of an imposter syndrome sometimes, I think, when especially when, I can see myself too on this journey, and, a certain phase where and then you start realizing, actually, I do know a lot about this. And that's, not that you're going to be preaching to people, but you can see kind of people reaching out, or, you share an experience of your own, because we've all been there and made the mistakes, But our Joe, our hero now, he's at the top of the hill, and this is the return with the treasure. So he's now the kind of coach voice. He's stepped up. He's mentoring new riders. He's sharing his story that's not hypothetical. He knows the research and he's had the experience. So he's emphasizing about attitudes and perceptions, and stereotypes exist, but real riders, they're showing that kind of nuanced traits, that are thoughtfulness and sort of conscientious. So he's kind of reached the peak, if you like, of his journey now.
So many different types of riders, so many different types of bikes. We don't all fit into to a box, or a motocross rider and an adventure bike rider, a Sunday rider, a road racer. The thing is, I don't like being pigeonholed, and as far as I'm concerned, I like to do all those things because I'm a rider, and I like two wheels and an engine, and working under my own propulsion, and being in control. So I think that so long as we are all helping one another try and get more out of motorcycling and become better at it, because we want to be experts, and I think that's just obviously key and crucial to what it is that we are trying to achieve with better riding.
Yeah.
Look, there's 12 steps there. We've talked a lot. I've waffled a bit. You've been very succinct and awesome. Do you want to just sort of try and summarize what we've learned in this episode?
Yeah, no, well, here's the thing, riding isn't just two wheels and wild freedom. The way I kind of look at it and kind of share it is it's a pact with the road. It's a pact with yourself and your family. And, it's a pact with motorcycling as well. We all want to do the right thing by motorcycling, and the real attitude isn't, this kind of fearless recklessness. It's about being clear-headed, focused and humility. And when you train and reflect, and ride ethically, you'll become more than a Joe. You become part of our riding culture, and that's kind of transformative, I think. So, I'd ask riders to take the course, and watch the attitudes. That's a big thing. Questioning your assumptions, and, really to become a critical thinker when it comes to motorbikes.
It's awesome advice as always, Mark, and it'd be great to hear from you, the viewers. If you can give perhaps your feedback in the comment section below. Tell us about your journey. Tell us about the critical and key things that you've learned along the way, and perhaps the wisdom that you've imparted too, and whether you've been able to help anyone else on their journey. We have a website called Bike Club. It's a bit like a forum, it's a bit like a social media, but it's all just for, we run it, we own it. So it's called Bike Club. So there's again another place to come and either ask questions or share information, share advice. Brilliant. Mark, awesome as always. Tell us, or tell the ladies and gentlemen, because I know already, what's coming up in the next episode.
Yeah, so the next one is episode 18. So we're just flying through them, and it's about flow. So it's really how to hack your ride using the latest neuroscience.
Wow. Every time I think this, it sounds like a school lesson, but every time I come away going, whoa, this is amazing. All right, fabulous. Thank you, Mark. I look forward to seeing you again and talking to you again and learning a whole lot more. Go and enjoy the rest of your evening.
No worries. Thanks, Michael. Cheers now.
Wonderful. We also say thank you to Honda Motorcycles UK. So Mark and I will be back next time, as you heard. In the meantime, don't forget to check out other better riding episodes. We've also talked about Bennetts Bike Club already just then. And we've also got a Facebook group, a private Facebook group you can come and join. I think there's about 10,000 people in there now. And that's called Bennetts BikeSocial. Just go to Facebook. And then also BikeSocial membership. If you're not a member yet, then you are missing out on over 200 different motorcycle apparel and clothing, training discounts, and such like. There's competitions and all sorts on there. Membership is free if you insure your motorcycle directly with Bennetts. Otherwise, you can still get involved. £6 a month or £60 a year. Just search for BikeSocial membership. Brilliant. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Honda Motorcycles are supporting this series because safety is one of their key business pillars, and their quest for safety inspires their innovations in products, technology, and education, which is why they're committed to achieving zero traffic fatalities involving Honda mobility products worldwide by 2050.